Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. My name's Rich, and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, and we can be found on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So do give us a search. We post 3 articles every day, morning, lunchtime, and evening here in the UK. These are written and posted on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as I said. And we cover all kinds of motorsport, from F1 to touring cars, from rallying to bikes, IndyCar, NASCAR, and anything we can shake a stick at in the form of race reviews, race previews, breaking news, any liveries, throwbacks, birthdays, the odd competition, and anything else we can shake a stick at. Really, we're here just to share a love of motorsport, so do come along for the ride. As I said, search for the Hard Compound on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and on YouTube, and come and give us a follow. You would be very, very welcome. In case you hadn't spotted, we also do live video interviews just like this one. And just like this one, these are broadcast live on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. They're also saved in the video section on Facebook and in the live section on our YouTube. We've done well over 100 of these now, which is amazing. And we've had some fantastic guests. I'm not going to name them all. You'll be glad to know. We've had the honour and the privilege of speaking with Mr. Mario Andretti, with Mr. Jackie Ickx. We've had John Watson, Hans Stuck, Chip Ganassi, Derek Warwick, David Brabham, Stefan Johansson, Alonso Jr., Will Power, Alex Palou, Carl Wendlinger, Mark Sura, Frank Durney, Dick Bennett, and many, many, many others. If you're tuning in tonight, though, you might like your touring cars and your tin tops. We've spoken to a lot of the British Touring Car Championship grid, past and present, the likes of Steve Soper, John Cledden, Rob Gravitt, Graham Good, Carl Jones, Frank Sittner, Jason Plato, Matt Neal, and I said a lot of the grid as well. And we've also had a couple of guests who have raced in the British Touring Car Championship and in the Porsche Super Cup, namely Ollie Jackson and Dan Camish. I've come on for a chat. A Yorkshireman called Dan, who's raced in Porsches and BTCC. That brings us very nicely onto this evening. And our guest, who has raced in those two categories and various TCR series across the world. And he was the first ever TCR UK champion. So without any further ado, we're going to bring him in right now. So please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Dan Lloyd.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing, Rich? You okay?
Yeah, very well, Dan. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Thank you, mate. All good.
Good. Good to see you again. I've seen you a lot in the last week, haven't I? Sort of down at Thruxton and everything. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on and having a chat. I'm glad we've got this sorted eventually. We've thrown a few dates around, haven't we?
Yeah, you're a busy guy, aren't you? Busy guy. So yeah, all good.
Well, yeah, everyone's busy, aren't they? We're all over the show, aren't we? Just before we get into the chat, I just want to say hello to everyone in the comments section. There's loads of you already. Hello, Tracy Hickley, Triple Crown Esports, Lyndon Belt, Dan Mayhew, Defan Evans. Who else have we got? Sheila Kersley from Kersley Motorsport. Hello, folks. So thank you all for joining. If you have any questions or comments, do pop them in the comment section, whichever platform you're tuning in on. And we will hopefully, if the technology is working, see them all in real time, and we'll try and work them in. So thank you all for joining us. Also, thanks to you, Dan, for coming on, having a chat. How's it all going, and how was testing or the rest of testing at Thruxton last week?
Yeah, obviously, bit of a slower start to the year so far. We knew we were going to be on the back foot a little bit, and we're making big steps forward now. So with Porsche Carrera Cup, we had a few test days before the season, but then we have 5 official test days throughout the season. So Thruxton test was actually last week, which is quite good for me, who's playing a bit of catch up. And actually, from what we struggled with at the first 2 rounds, we went to this test at Thruxton with quite a different setup. We wanted to try a few different things, and it worked pretty well, to be honest. We were up at the sharp end straight away. When it was wet, I was 6th quickest. Some of the sessions where it didn't go so well, I was 12th. And then in the last session, I was P2, which was mega. There was a few of the top boys who didn't put new tyres on, so I'm not getting too carried away just yet. I think realistically I could have been about 5th or 6th, but I also wasn't happy with my lap. There was also other things to improve on, so definitely heading in the right direction.
Yeah, excellent, which is good. And I had a wander round just after I left the paddock area, round just beyond the complex there. And in the afternoon, you did seem to be flying a bit. So it was good to see that it wasn't just me, making things up in my own mind. It was good to see that like the pace was improving, which is great. And you're back there this weekend, aren't you? On the Toka package, which is always a good weekend, isn't it? At Thruxton.
Yeah, definitely, especially in the Porsches where you can really stretch the legs. That circuit is frightening in most cars, but in a Porsche, it's unbelievably quick. But I love it. It's good fun. I had my first ever win in a Porsche at Thruxton 11 years ago when I was the scholar driver. When it was raining, when we were on slicks. So it's somewhere that if you fear it a little bit, then it really bites you. But if you look forward to it and you feel confident around it, it's a mega circuit to drive.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, I've driven around it a few times in various sort of cars on track days and whatnot. It's quite surprising, isn't it? Because it's so fast, especially out the back with Church is ridiculous. But it's really grippy, isn't it? So you can really sort of, if you've got the car set up right, you can really give it, you can really give it the berries, can't you?
Yeah, you just got to be confident with the car moving. That's the biggest thing. Through Church, we're actually doing around 130 miles an hour minimum. That's the minimum speed on a good set of tyres. I actually made some amazing video content last week, which I'm going to be putting out very soon, which is probably the best in-car video content I've ever done. So I'm really excited to put that out very soon.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. And you mentioned off air you've got a new sponsor coming on board, which is being announced tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a new partner. It's a great brand. It's always great to get extra support in the middle of a season. It's actually enabled us to have more new tyres through testing as well. So it's hopefully going to increase the performance throughout the year. That's going to be announced Friday morning at 11 a.m. And for any of the motorsport fans watching, they're going to be running, I would arguably say, one of the best motorsport competitions you could enter in terms of a prize for a motorsport fan. So we're making the announcement on Friday. Keep an eye out, and then we're going to launch a competition in probably three or 4 weeks' time.
Oh, fantastic! Love the sound of that. We all like the opportunity to to get something. So yeah, folks, tune in 11 o'clock on I guess on your socials, Dan.
Yeah, that's right. You'll see it. I'll plaster it everywhere.
Great stuff. Looking forward to it. Good. So that's the present and the immediate future. But I guess what I always like to do in these chats, regardless of whoever I'm speaking to, where they are in their career, is where it all started. Where did your interest in motorsport come from, and when was it that you thought, I fancy having a go at this?
My story is a little bit different to, I'd say, the majority's. My dad was quite ill when I was younger. He had quite a severe brain tumor when I was about 9 years old. He got through it, but it was a serious one, quite deep, and he got through it. Didn't spend a lot of time with each other for a couple of years when he was recovering. He got better. We wanted to do something together. Did a bit of tennis, football. I had just no interest in it. And then we went go-karting and just got hooked. As soon as I got in it, setting lap records quite early in an indoor karting centre in Batley. It was Batley. Can't remember what it's called now. And yeah, we just got hooked together. And as you are when you're a kid, your parents want you to do well. They're pushing you. And for me, it was always like the competition and the speed and, how tight everything is and the buzz you get actually from succeeding from it. That's what really hooked me. And then obviously you catch the bug and then you're in it then, aren't you? So yeah, a little bit different.
Yeah. Now, so obviously, once the adrenaline gets you, it sort of never leaves, does it? And obviously, very glad that your dad obviously pulled through and everything. One thing I do want to throw in here, you mentioned Batley. That's the second time that Batley has come up in a chat because my mum is from Batley.
Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I know.
Yeah.
No wonder she moved 200 miles down south.
A good choice. Yeah.
But the other time that it came up, and I had no idea, was James Hinchcliffe, the IndyCar driver and commentator. He was born there.
All right.
Like,
Okay.
wow, that was the last person I thought would be born in Batley. You know, he's from Ontario now and goes IndyCar racing. He's got to be the only IndyCar driver born in Batley.
Just born there, didn't live there, just born
No,
there.
he said he was born there and lived there for about, because his dad was working or something over here. And he was born and they went back like 6 months later. I think that his vision kicked in and
Yeah.
No, sorry folks, there's nothing wrong with Batley. Swig of drink at the right time. Yorkshire folk, I am joking, of course. It is a lovely part of the world. So you got the bug and you've gone racing and gone karting and the adrenaline is there. And I guess you just, when it, rather than wanting to go faster and beating yourself, I guess you wanted to start competing locally and nationally, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, so the guys who owned the indoor karting place I went to, his sons did outdoor karting. Went along to watch them, and then coincidentally enough, Oliver Rowland's dad actually went into my dad's business to sell him a telecom package. Saw pictures of me karting, said, "Oh well, if you buy the package, then you can come to PF and I'll give you a day out." So I went to PF with Ollie and his dad, and that kind of got us into the more national series. Actually, at the time, me and Ollie was similar ages, but Ollie was doing some mechanicking for me and stuff. So, that got us into that stage of it, and naturally you want to do the British and do as much as you can. And cars was, when you're stuck in the karting world, you can't really see forward into cars. But at the time when I was doing Stars of Tomorrow, there was a BRDC championship to go into Ginetta Juniors. So I finished third in the Stars of Tomorrow championship. Got into the shootout.
This was around 06, wasn't it? 06, 07 kind of time, I guess.
God knows. I don't
something
know.
Like that.
Probably, yeah, something like that.
We'll go with that.
Won the scholarship, got the backing from BRDC, and when I went into junior Ginettas, that was the first year it was on the Toka package. So then that was what sort of introduced me to the Toka package when I was 16.
That's brilliant. And I guess obviously with it being a scholarship, I guess there was a certain amount of funding and backing that came your way just because of the nature of it being a scholarship. You didn't have to find perhaps as much as everyone else, perhaps.
At the time, it was a really good scholarship. The vast majority of it was all covered. To be honest with you, if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have gone into cars because we couldn't. My dad did well. He had a business. He's done really well for himself, but he didn't have motorsport money. It takes a hell of a lot of money to get into cars at the top level. So we did a year of junior Ginettas, did well, and then we managed to get the funds together to do Clio Cup. Again, obviously on the Toka package. And then I went to Germany where I won a scholarship to drive in the Strokoar Cup, which was heavily subsidised by VW. And we were the support package for DTM. So that was awesome. So I went to like Hockenheim, Norris Ring, Nürburgring, some really cool places. One make series, it was backed by VW, so like the standard was amazing. And then at the end of that year, I think I finished third in the championship. That's when I entered for the Porsche scholarship in the UK. It was the same year Ingram actually applied for it, so we were in the final four. And then I won that scholarship so I got a big chunk of money towards the budget for Porsche. So after karting, I had a really nice run of winning some scholarships and sort of moving up the ladder.
Which is obviously a great help, these scholarships, and obviously we're all familiar with the Road to Indy ladder, where if you win, you go up the class and it's part funded and things like that. And it's obviously great that you were able to almost experience that not without trying, but without really targeting it. It was just the way it fell for you, which was always very, very helpful. One thing I do sort of want to touch on, though, just to backtrack a tiny bit, was when you went from karts to cars. Now, I've asked this to a lot of people. Half the people have said they found the transition quite easy, especially going into like something like a Ginetta. They said some people said it felt like a big go-kart. Other people said they couldn't get used to like the roll on it or the depth perception sitting on one side of the car, things like that. I'm always interested to find out what you found when you got into a racing car for the first time and really opened it up.
Yeah, I'd say it was definitely difficult when you're going from a little go-kart to what was a massive car back then when you're 16 years old, hitting the brakes and it taking forever to slow down. It was a H-pattern gearbox. You had to heel and toe then, which makes me sound really old. So like when you're not even driving on the road and doing that, it's a lot to get used to. But as well, when you're young, it's amazing how quick you can pick stuff up. You know, I find it now. I'm 32 and I'm up against some young guys and they're bloody quick just because of how quick they get it and the amount of track time they have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say it was a tough transition, but I think when you're a kid, everything's just speeds up so much.
And you can absorb more, can't you, when you're younger? Your learning capacity sort of vanishes when you get older. And I said, no, I'm 43 now, and it's gone. I'm done. But I had a quick look at the results to begin with. I mean, you had a run of top tens to start with, which I guess was a confidence booster. And you got your first podium finish at Rockingham. That must have felt great. Your first podium in car racing. You must have thought, oh yes, I can do this. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'll be honest, I can't even remember that. I really can't. I remember getting my first win at Croft.
Yeah,
I remember that one, but I don't remember Rockingham, so I can't really comment on that.
Well, it's all been knocked down now, isn't it? Or it was going to be anyway, which is a shame.
Yeah, that was a good circuit. That was a real shame. I really liked Rockingham. Mega for spectators, great for racing because it was actually a wide circuit. So it was a shame that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people miss Rockingham. It's a shame it didn't quite, work, with the ASCAR thing and the Indy style racing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned Croft. It's your home circuit, and you got your first win there. That must have been a pretty big deal, I guess. Well, with a family there, and
yeah, I mean, any win like now, even never mind the first ones back then, but any win is just so special, and everyone who watches motorsport, they know how many downs and tough times you have, and it's those wins that just keep you hooked and make it that addiction, really. So yeah, it's always special.
it kind of keeps that fire burning, which is
yeah,
which again kind of never goes. I just got that for that first year. You finished fifth overall, which I guess you're pretty happy with. I mean, but I had a quick look at the grid for that first year, and it was pretty strong. There's like Dino Zamparelli was on it. There was Thomas Carnaby and Josh Hill did well. Alice Powell and Sarah Moore and people that have gone on to do really good things. So even at like Ginetta level, it was a pretty strong setup, wasn't it? It was a strong grid, and it's continued to be the case, hasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It's always been a strong championship, and they do great things. And there's a ladder there to go up, and look at Lando Norris, and you even see it now. Like some of the young lads who are actually on a path to F1 still jumping junior Ginettas, maybe because of Lando, but certainly doesn't do any of them any harm. There's been lads testing in junior Ginettas while they're doing tons of testing in F4. So yeah, mega championship.
Yeah, it's great, and it kind of doesn't tie you to the tin tops world or to the single set. It's a good proving ground for anything, isn't it? As we've seen, certainly with Lando. That was great when he won, wasn't it? That was
Yeah.
we all
Yeah.
enjoyed that. Everyone loved it. The Clio Cup we mentioned, 2009. Now I missed the Clio Cup. I mean, nothing against the minis on the package, but I used to love the Clio Cup. It was a shame that the grid was getting smaller. I mean, obviously you mentioned that was part of the scholarship.
No, Cleo wasn't. That was
it not? Okay.
different. Yeah, that was Scirocco.
Oh, Scirocco, sorry. How did the switch to the with the Clios come about? Because you joined with Team Pyro and then you did you switch? No, yeah, sorry, it was Team Pyro, wasn't it, that you got in with?
Yeah.
How did that come about on the back of the genetics?
It goes back to the fact that my family never came from a motorsport background. I didn't really know what to do, where to go. Obviously won the scholarship, so went into juniors. So that was an easy choice and a good path. And then because we were on the Toka package, the obvious and realistic, achievable thing was to go to Clio's. So no other reason than that, to be honest. Just moving up while it was, on ITV.
Yeah, and I guess the TV coverage makes it a slightly easier sell, I guess, to anyone who wants to get involved and need backers, things like that. Relatively affordable, and I've got just that you were in and around the top sort of 10 the whole sort of season on a tough grid that had like Phil Glue on it and Aaron Taylor Smith now, sorry, Dave Newsham and Sam Tordoff, Jeff Smith, chap called Danny Buxton. He's now still knocking around, isn't he? Again, a strong grid, wasn't it? It was like super competitive.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, really competitive. And just in case you ask me loads of questions about certain results, there's only one result I remember that, and that's when Danny Buxton was chasing me. I was getting like 6s and 7s and stuff like that. And then I led a race at Rockingham, actually for like, I think 11 out of 13 laps. And then I put it in the wall on my own, coming out of the final chicane. So again, that was one I really remember. That one hurt. Emotionally, not physically, but yeah, it was a tough season, but it was really, really good championship.
Yeah, great stuff, and it was good. It was really enjoyable to watch, even and it still is. Just something I did spot when I was doing research and stuff. You did the Skip Barber single seater thing out in the States. I mean, that's a bit of a shift. I mean, you've gone sort of karts, Ginetta's, Clio, and all of a sudden you're in the States in single seaters. Anyone who will have watched these know I'm quite big on the American racing and IndyCar and the Road to Indy and all that. How did it all come about? Because I saw that you raced at some great circuits as well.
Yeah, Sebring was like the highlight. That was amazing.
Yeah.
That came about. I can't remember what year it was or where it was in between all of the rest of it. But basically, we didn't have the budget to do any racing at that point.
Right.
And Skip Barber wanted a European driver, so I managed to get a drive out there for. It was very cheap, very, very. It was like $1,000 for a race weekend or something. Like with everything. So, so that's why we did it, just because it was available at the time, and it was a good experience. And obviously the prizes were amazing. But yeah, it was like, and this has happened a lot through my career when I've struggled to make a plan and go, this is what I need to do. I've either had to step away or go, right, okay, I'll go here or go with that team or get that drive. That's happened a lot, which is why I've done so much over my career. There's someone, I did a talk recently and he said, oh, can you do a talk about what you've done over the years? And went on Google and started getting images, and there were some images that I even forgot I'd raced certain cars. Wow. I've done that many different things. But yeah, it was a good experience.
I mean, that was partly why I wanted to have you on for a chat. So you've done so much stuff, and it did make keeping the notes relatively short quite tricky, because I mean you've done loads and loads of stuff. I mean, while you were out in the States, I looked at the circuits you raced at. I might have missed some, but you raced at Homestead in Miami, Sebring, Lime Rock Park, Road America, and Road Atlanta. I mean, they're like all my bucket list ones. They're the ones I want to go to. It must have been cool racing at those circuits.
Yeah. In fact, I remember it was when I was 18, because when I turned 18, I was at a bar with my dad and I asked for a beer and he looked at me like I was like an idiot going, no way. So obviously you have to be 21, don't you? So
Yeah.
I couldn't get a beer on my 18th.
Oh.
So yeah, it was back when I was 18.
Wow. It's very, very cool though. I guess you weren't looking at like staying out there for any longer though. You weren't looking at getting into
It was at the time, it was just take it because the opportunity was there.
Yeah.
And if other opportunities came along, then I'd go for it. But I think that was a year where I did a bit of everything. Yeah, that was a year out. So I did Clio Cup, then did like a bit of nothing. Then I did Skip Barber, and then I did the round with Triple Eight Racing. So we got the money together to do with the official test at Rockingham. So it was just a test. But then I was like P4 when I was 18 years old at the end of the day. And then the guys who put some money in for the test, we found some money to do Croft.
Right.
So that was a year where it was a little bit messy. And at the end of that year, that's when I entered for the Porsche scholarship, I think.
Gotcha. Okay.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. And that does answer the question that has just come in from Diffan Evans, evening Diffan. He said, how did the drive in the BTCC round at Croft come about? Which is a perfect timing because we've just gone into it. While we're on that, when you got, obviously as you said, you'd been P4 in the test. How did you feel on your first BTCC weekend? Were you thinking, crikey, I'm here? Because I guess being in the Clios and the Ginettas, you're on the package. Your eyes must have been wandering towards the BTCC.
Yeah, always. And you always feel a little bit out of your depth, and you get put in a car like that. But when you're 18 years old, and again, you see it a lot. Like when you're young, you've just got no fear whatsoever, and you will go flat out, and you'll put in a good lap. You'll be quick, but you'll also crash a lot as well. You'll make a lot of mistakes, and you don't have the experience. So obviously, on that day, like it was a really good day, and we were quick, and it allowed us to go to Croft. Obviously, it was a really good team, really good car at the time.
Yeah.
But even I think back to that and think, bloody hell, I was 18. How did I do that? And I think when I went to Croft, I did 3 points finishes as well on the first weekend.
Yeah.
That's better than what I've done the last 14 months in touring cars, I think. So yeah. Yeah, it was a mega experience.
And obviously, you mentioned the other points finishes. Your first race, you finished 7th in the BTCC, which is known as being one of the toughest series. Obviously, it's so competitive.
That would have been a result last year. That one, 14 years later.
There's been some higher points in the middle. God, but you must have been chuffed to bits with 7th on your first race. Obviously, I guess you didn't have time to think about it because you went on. You had race 2, 14th, and then 8th in race 3. But you must have thought at the end of that day, crikey, that went well.
Yeah, definitely. But again, when you're a kid, it's weird. Like you got no preference, have you? You got no like standards. So I might have jumped in and gone, oh, yeah, that were good, right? I want a top 5 straight away. Like it's amazing how quick your expectations change. But yeah, obviously it was great to do that.
Yeah, and obviously on your home circuit as well, which is great. And I guess you always had your eyes on the BTCC, but it took a little while to get back. But you mentioned the Scirocco Cup. Now this was cool because I didn't. I knew bits about it, but I saw when I looked into it, you took a pole and a podium on your debut at Hockenheim. That is a good place to start, both in terms of the track and the results, isn't it? Did you expect it?
I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know. Like I was really quick when I was younger. I'd like to still think I am now. And you just turn up without any expectations and see how you got on. But I just loved the circuits in Germany. Got on well with the car, and it's sort of front wheel drive, and I just got on with it really well straight away.
That's brilliant. And obviously at Hockenheim, I'm kind of old enough to remember what I call the proper Hockenheim, the one out in the woods, where the cars vanished for 5 minutes at a time. But it's even like the shorter track, it's still a cool one. I spoke with Max Gertz in a few weeks back, obviously doing the GTs, and he said that he got bored of it. I thought, crikey, that's a luxury, being able to get bored at Hockenheim. And you also took a win at the Lausitz Ring. I mean, obviously, people who might know, that's where Alex Zanardi had his shunt. What's that circuit like to drive? It's not really one that I've seen much of. The one at Lausitz Ring. I mean,
I'm trying to remember. I'm sorry, I'm not doing really well here.
No, it's all good.
I think that race was the last time I went there. Like Hockenheim, right. we did it in TCR Europe and stuff, so I know it well. I've done tests there, but I think Lausitz Ring, I think that was the one and only time I ever went there. But I must have liked it. It did all right.
Yeah, it did pretty well. You won there, so I mean, it's all right. Sorry, you had and you have had a podium at the Nürburgring, which is a cool thing to be able to say. Obviously, it wasn't on the Nordschleife, I'm assuming, no. But it's still a cool place to go racing. It's like the home of motorsport. When it comes to certainly in Europe, isn't it? Of the continually used tracks, it's probably the home of motorsport. It's a very cool place to go racing, I bet.
Yeah, mega circuits, absolutely awesome, and they're not too long. But like, for example, if you put a British touring car race around one of those circuits, it would just be incredible because they're wide. They've got a lot of character, a bit old school undulations. So yeah, they're mega to race on.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love it. I'd love to go watch some racing out there. Just quickly, as an aside on this, it seemed there were a number of guest drivers on each round, and I had a look at who you would have raced against as the guest drivers. There was like Nicola Larini, Johnny Herbert, Frank Bieler, Jan Lammers, Johnny Cicotto, Alex Espargaro, the MotoGP rider, Tiffany Dale, Juha Kankkunen, Mark Blundell, Ari Lyondike, Patrick Tombe. I mean, blimey. I mean, that's pretty good for a domestic touring car series, just to have like one-off drivers like that, isn't it?
Yeah, the funding for the championship was incredible. Like, that was 14 years ago, and the hospitality back then was like a spaceship. The toilets are all electric, had TVs everywhere. Like, just incredible the detail they went to. Obviously, being on the DTM package, I'd probably, similar to the equivalent of, say, like Super Cup with F1. You got really limited track time, but obviously you were on that package. So like when VW, after we sometimes race on a Saturday, a lot of the DTM drivers would come for the party at the VW side, and it was amazing, really, really cool.
That's awesome. What a cool time that must have been. Saying I've like spoken with Ari Lyondike, and I remember that he mentioned it, and he said it was pretty cool, but he said that he can remember the party but not the race, which is probably what you're alluding to, which is cool. So yeah, that was 2011, but 2012 came back home, as it were, to the Carrera Cup. I mean, you said that you don't really plan things; it just drives that come up. Was it nice to be back racing back in the UK rather than with the Germans?
I mean, with the main thing, that was probably one of the proudest times in my career when I did win the scholarship. It's just there are a lot of scholarships out there which don't do what they say they're going to do, and they don't do things properly, but the Porsche scholarship do, and it's amazing. And if you commit to it and you perform, then you'll definitely go places. So to win that was incredible. And then back then it was just a year commitment. It was a new scholar every year, and I was, at the time, I was the only scholar to win a race in the first season, and at that point they extended it for a second season. So I was massively, grateful for that, and it was just such a cool experience. Like doing Goodwood Festival of Speed. I was doing work for Porsche in the background. We're going to the Porsche Human Performance Centre at Silverstone. So it was incredible.
It was all in. It was a proper It was a proper job.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's where you mentioned you mentioned earlier your win at Thruxton in the series. It was obviously there. And you also had like podiums at Donington and third at Knock Hill. And I've always thought about this. Taking a Porsche around Knock Hill, I mean, taking anything around Knock Hill is pretty bonkers, isn't it? Because it's a brilliant place to go racing. What's it like in a Porsche? Because they're so quick and it's like hard to get them to fly, but you guys manage it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tested there this year yet. We've got a test there before the race weekend, so I'm really interested to see how it feels because the curves have changed a lot since when I raced there 11 years ago. I remember I've got a photo of all four wheels off the ground in the Porsche back then, and as a lot of people have now anyway. But I'm really fascinated to see how it is through that chicane. Because obviously we don't go to places like Stetson, which is the longest circuit in the country, but then we go to Little Knock Hill. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what it feels like.
Yeah, because and I think someone did ask how much the cars have changed in between, which we're going to come to very soon. But you said you took sixth in your first season overall, fourth in your second season, so there's good luck progression there. I guess was there any chance of like staying with it and like being retained by Porsche or getting a drive elsewhere in the championship?
Yeah, so I think back then I was very quick, but I made a lot of mistakes, and then which is why I could only manage fourth in the championships. There was too many DNS and things like that. And then at the end of that year, Porsche put me forward for the International Super Cup scholarship. So every Carrera Cup around the world nominated one driver from the championship. And we all went to Oschersleben for a 2-day test. So they had factory Porsche engineers there. They had 4 different cup cars for around 16 different people. We each had 3 new sets of tyres each. So it was a proper test. And at the end of 2 days, we did like a race run and a quali run. And there was me and another driver who were like half a second quicker than everyone else. He was about a tenth quicker than me in quali, and I was about 10th and a half quicker than him over a race run. And that was Earl Bamber. And
wow,
then
okay.
we were supposed to get a decision in 4 or 5 days after that of who was the winner. Anyway, it went 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, still nothing. And Earl entered for the final round of Super Cup in Abu Dhabi, put it on pole, came second and got fastest lap of the race. He was announced as a winner. The guys from Porsche almost like apologised to me and said, Dan, it was close and we'll help you. And I think this was probably one of the biggest mistakes in my career because they sent that data from the test to some Porsche teams in Germany, and I got an offer to go and race in German Carrera Cup with a top team. And at the same time, I got an offer to do British GT and Blancpain Endurance Series with Motorbase. And I turned it down, and I kick myself for that now. I think that was a mistake. Obviously, it's all in hindsight, but knowing what I know now and how the GT world works and what you have to do, I should have stuck on that Porsche route because I do feel like I was this close to really going to the next level.
Yeah, going up that, going on the GT kind of route.
But it is what it is. You never know. Could have gone to Germany and had a disaster.
Well, exactly.
It's one thing like now when younger drivers ask for some advice, I do feel like I could give them advice because you do make mistakes throughout your career.
Yeah, I mean, I forget who I was speaking with. It might have been, I think it was Fabrizio Giovanardi, and he had, when he was in single seaters back in the day, and he had the choice to go with Camel sponsorship or with Marlboro sponsorship. And he'd been with Camel for a year or two, and he went with Camel, and then about 3 years later, the whole thing went pop. Whereas Marlboro went off and did McLaren and all the other stuff, and he just thought, But I just say at the time you do what you think is right, and as you say, I mean, you could have gone the other way, and it may not have worked out anyway. So, But yeah, you mentioned you went and did you did like the GT Sprint Cup and the Endurance series with Beach Dean, and you got to have a thump around in an Aston Martin, which must have been cool.
Yeah, the GT3 cars are awesome. They were then and they still are. And then as well, did some really cool races, like Spa 24 hour and things like that. So yeah, really cool car.
Just quick on Spa. I mean, it comes up in every chat pretty much, and everyone has said they absolutely love it. I guess you enjoyed yourself around there as well.
Yeah, favorite circuit in the world, that one.
Yeah.
And then when I first drove it at night, it was like the first time I've ever driven a race car again. Like, get out with your smile on your face, like the buzz it gives you. Yeah, amazing.
I've always said that about people that have done these endurance races. I mean, I've spoken with some of the very best. You know, I've had like Emmanuel Pirro on here, who's won Le Mans loads and loads of times, and like, Brian Redman and Mike Wilds and Soper and Brabham and all these guys that have done the night races, and they've all said the same thing. Said nothing can prepare you for your first time racing at night, because there's the glare of the headlights. There's everything's kind of like a tunnel, and all the other senses have to kind of deal with it. And it's like hyper focused, and you've got slower cars and faster cars, and all you can see is headlights. I mean, is that what you found? And you thought, this is, I mean, I would have thought this is brilliant, but absolutely mental. Did you kind of think the same thing?
Yeah, it's just your adrenaline. Everything comes quicker, and it's a new challenge. Like, it's something new, you know. But you've done tens of thousands of laps in a race car around the track, and all of a sudden you got something completely different, and that's what excites you.
That's fantastic. Kind of something I'd like to do, but also not. Yeah, no, very cool, cool stuff. Hang on. Oh yeah, we've got Lyndon Belt. He's obviously he's caught up. He says the best thing to come out of Batley are biscuits. There you go. Yeah, gotta love a biscuit. Absolutely.
100%.
That's a good shout. Right. That's what brings us up to 2016. I am rattling on because I know about time, but you got into the BTCC grid, I guess, pretty much full time. You went into Eurotech. Was it when, because from what I can remember, was it Andy Neat was at Dynamics in the Honda, and then he vanished, and then there was another TBL got moved or something, wasn't it? And you were able to get in, basically. I guess you didn't have to think twice when the opportunity came up.
No, definitely not. I'm trying to think how it came up at the time.
Remember something involving Andy Neat and Dynamics?
Yeah, it Jeff Smith who won the team, and he had a drive available, and obviously jumped to have a go in it. And Thrux, I think the first round was at Thruxton or Rockingham, and struggled a little bit. We had an issue in qualifying, and then the next two rounds we managed to get on the front row at Alton Park and Croft. Alton did okay and finished in top 6, and did okay, and then Croft went for the lead into the first corner around Turkington, and that ended badly. So, but yeah,
I kind of wasn't going to mention it. But yeah, okay.
No, it was a mega car, and yeah, it was like, I think we were only there for 3 rounds because, again, it was something that came up. We had a bit of budget at the time, so we said, all right, we'll give it a go.
Yeah, just on the car, it was a Honda Civic, wasn't it? Like the old Civic. And I always remember that it was just a brilliant looking car as well. You know, obviously I have no idea what it drove like, but I remember it looked good. It was like the red and the blue, wasn't it? It was a really cool, really cool looking car. Kind of missed that livery. It always looked good.
Yeah.
It's no, cool. So the following year, you went. Obviously, you made your debut in the series with like 888, and you ended up there in 2017. I guess like the opportunity was there, and you were able to get the backing together, and so you went for it. Just from the outside looking in, that year, the car it never really looked quite kind of on it. I always remember thinking that, thinking it was so close to being quite good from the outside looking in. What was it like to drive and like to feel behind the wheel?
Yeah, it was a struggle. You know, like jumped in other cars over the years, and when it's got pace, and with that car, we just couldn't get it to work. Tried so many different things, and unfortunately, I had some sponsors pull out, and we were knocking on at the back, and that's why I couldn't continue. But yeah, I don't know, like touring cars, they're a strange species of those cars, because if you get them in the window they can be amazing, which obviously the MG had so much success, but for some reason that year it just wasn't working.
Yeah, sure. There's a comment in from Keith Mail about TCR and BTCC, which we're going to come to very shortly. But that year, you had the opportunity to go to the TCR International Series or European Series or whatever it was. And you joined James Nash and like Pepe Oriola in the Lucor SEAT team. I've asked this before and I'm going to ask it again. How did it all come around? I mean, again, was it an opportunity that just came up to race in Europe?
At the time, it actually came from someone who was managing me and helping me out. So at the time, actually, I can't remember his name. Someone dropped out of the team. I can't remember who it was, but there was a drive available. Sorry, what did you say?
I'm going to have a Google.
All right. It's quite a well-known name. But anyway, there was a drive available, and sort of took it.
And and I guess it gave you a chance to go and to go and race abroad again. Go and get something different. I've got here. Oh yes, I did see that. Was it Hugo Valente, French?
That's it. Yeah.
I knew I'd seen it on the research. But yeah, and you drove it at the Salzburg ring. Now this comes up. Obviously, it's been on TCR, and on the WTCR. I think bikes go there as well. It's a cool circuit. I'd like to see a bit of money pumped into it because it looks like a really good circuit.
It's really quick. Cool. I remember in qualifying there were three of us who were towing each other, and we had a plan, so we rotated. So one person would lead. That leader would pull over, next two go through, he'd join the back, and then would rotate over 3 laps because the tow just made that much of a difference. So yeah, it was a cool circuit, and mega competitive grid. Like that was obviously before WTCR came out. We had a lot of the same drivers in, like Rob Huff was there, Gianni Morbidelli. So really tough grid, which was good.
Yeah, that was really cool. I always remember that kind of time in like on the International Touring Car Series. As you say, there was some proper drivers in there. One thing you mentioned about Oschersleben earlier on in the chat. I think it was your best result that season was second, behind Mr. Morbidelli, which is pretty cool. Beaten only by an ex-Ferrari driver, F1 driver, and all that. That kind of must have been a proud one.
You cut off then a bit, Rich. Were you talking about the podium at Oschersleben?
Yeah, I think it's probably for the best to shut me up, isn't it? No, but yeah, you came second, to Mr. Morbidelli. Pretty cool.
That was really cool. Because there was John Carl Vernet, who started third as well. Yeah. And we were all in the same car. The Seats and VWs are the same, and managed to get P2 in front of Huff. And that was a big moment for me. Stood on a podium like that with those sorts of names, so that was cool.
Yeah, that's some good company to be keeping. One thing I did spot as well, you came sixth in Hungary. Now it's known as being a tight, twisty circuit. It hasn't really changed much. Did you enjoy going around that one? Because it's very technical, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, awesome circuit. The calendar for World TCR Europe, they're all amazing circuits. Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw that you raced out in Thailand, China, and Abu Dhabi. Was it Buriram out in Thailand? That's another circuit that I've seen. I think the bikes go there. Yeah. It must be quite a shift in terms of the style of circuit. Obviously, it's probably hot and humid or something as well. Must have been a bit of a shift from the European rounds.
Yeah, I mean, they were all. I actually, they're my favourite sorts of circuits. It was actually quite hard coming back to the UK after doing those circuits for years, to TCR Europe, World TCR, GT Asia, like Shanghai, Sepang, Spa, because it's a different technique because the lap is that long. You have one shot at it. So when, say, for example, in qualifying, you'll drive at 95%. And if you nail the lap at 95%, then you're gonna be in a good position. Where actually, when I came back to the UK, because the tracks are so short, you've got 12 opportunities at putting in a lap. You've got 3 sets of tyres. You've got Silverstone National. You'll have 5 laps at it. So you've got to drive 105% and hope that you just nail one.
Wow,
it's a really different technique. So actually, when I came back, it adapting to the larger tracks was easier for me. Coming back to the UK was a bit more difficult.
Right, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think that's why drivers can either, I know this to come across badly, can either do really well in GT or do really well in touring car. There's very few that have done well in both for that reason, I guess.
That's why the year when we're in Palmax, when they did the shootout, if you got in the top 10, I always did better in the shootout because they go, right, okay, you got 2 laps, so you got 1 lap. And I like that. And, I could do a lap under pressure, but I do find, especially now with track limits, people push like crazy. And if they get it together and they get a bit lucky and they don't get done on that lap, then they get one through. So it's quite different, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I love hearing all that kind of stuff. Defan Evans, he said it was 7 years ago today that the announcement came out that you had split with Triple Eight Racing. He has done his
bloody hell.
He has done his research.
Yeah.
Fair play, Defan. That's very cool. New calling format. Yeah, we're going to come to that very, very shortly. And the YouTube channels as well. So yeah, 2018. You mentioned you came back home. TCR UK, the inaugural TCR UK series. I remember being very excited about it because I'd seen it in Europe and Asia and all over the show. I guess the fact that it was a new series and you'd done some TCR was part of the appeal. And you ended up joining a Swedish team, as you would in a UK series, with the Backman pair, Andreas and Jessica. How did all that come about? And did you expect to go as well as you did?
So that came about a little bit from the Oschersleben the international series a little bit because West Coast Racing were running Gianni Morbidelli, and they said, "Who's this little kid from the UK who's pushing us around a little bit?" So they saw what I did, and then when they were looking at doing the UK, I was actually coaching the Backmans at the time.
Right.
So I was doing some coaching for them in Sweden. They wanted more experience, so they did the UK. So we put a deal together where I raced with them and helped them while I was racing as well.
That's cool. It sounds like it all came together at the right time, and it was a heck of a season, as people will know. I saw that you took pole and double victory at the first 3 rounds of the season, Silverstone, Knockhill, and Brands. I mean, if you're going to start a season, that's how you do it, isn't it? You must have been loving it. You must have been loving life at that point.
Yeah, no, it was good. I felt really on form. It wasn't the largest grid in the world at the time, but still nailed everything that year. Felt really in a good place. So yeah, no, it was a good year. And if it wasn't for that deal and that championship at that point, I don't think I would have been racing at that point.
Right.
So actually having that opportunity actually kept my career going then as well, which was great.
Well, it was that pivotal. And just to tack on to that, I mean, you had another win at Castle Combe and poles and fastest laps and wins at Donington and all that kind of thing. And obviously, was it your first championship? Well, the first championship that you'd won in cars, or was there one before? I can't remember.
I think so.
But it was certainly the first. It was the first ever TCR UK champion. Pretty cool.
Yeah. It was really good. And then also, I think because of that helped me get the drive in the BTC Honda in touring cars as well.
Yeah, sure. With with Bert and obviously Ben and everyone with that. And obviously, you've done well that year. I was personally very pleased to see you in the BTCC. I think you replaced James Nash, who was out in Europe. It was again at Croft. It all came together. It's kind of better. You kind of got like top 10 finishes there, eighth and ninth, I think it was, and reverse grid pole, home track, British Touring Car Championship. What is it? Your second or third round back. Must have been pretty exciting when your ping pong ball came out there.
Yeah. I remember that moment actually because I screamed. I was like, yes, and I just felt confident. I thought, right, this is mine. And yeah, it was really special day. That one. That was obviously my first win at a home circuit, and it was only the second round back. So yeah, it was amazing.
That's fantastic. And obviously, from the outside looking in, it looked quite easy. Not that it ever is, but I mean, it was fairly. You had quite a good cushion by the end of the race. Did it go as well as you could have hoped it to have gone? You didn't have anyone bashing into you or hitting you in the door or anything like that. You were pretty much in control.
Yeah, I mean, leading's always difficult, but as well, like at Alton, we got caught up in a huge crash as well. So they'd only just repaired the car for that round. I think in the first practice at Croft, I was 28th. So like to turn the weekend around like that, I think I won by over like 5 seconds. So yeah, it was obviously always nice to have a breathing space, but when it's your first win, it doesn't feel like you got any breathing space.
No, I'll bet, and yeah, what a great place to do it as well. Just quickly, because you came from the Golf into the Civic, I mean, are they quite? I mean, obviously they're different series and they're set up differently, but as cars to drive, are they quite similar, or are they chalk and cheese?
Completely different. Completely different. TCR is a lot easier to drive. BTCC is mega unique. They're unique to any car, really. So yeah, a lot different.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to come to that shortly. There's a few questions about the differences. Just want to buzz on because that was 2018, 2019. Was there any opportunity to get into the BTCC for that year, or was it just opportunities came up? Well, in the Far East mainly, wasn't
it? What did I do in 19? Can't remember.
That's it. I've got like TCR Asia with Honda and racing out of China.
That's it. Yeah. So we were trying to get together a deal with BTC. It didn't work. Didn't have the budget, and then through some coaching and things like that, I managed to do TCR Europe, and through that, the connection with Honda. Then Honda placed me in TCR Asia, TCR Malaysia, TCR China. So that was a busy year.
Yeah, I'll bet lots of traveling, and it was pretty cool. You're able to go and race in those kinds of places. I'm not even going to try and name the Chinese circuits because I can't. They're all like one was Shanghai. I know that.
Yeah.
One was Shanghai, and you got a win there. Obviously, where they have the Grand Prix. Again, it must be another cool place to take a win.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'll bet. Got to talk about the Brutal Fish team. Brilliant name from Slovakia. And you signed my photo, Thaxton. Thank you. That was TCR Europe. Again, back to some like familiar circuits that you'd raced before. And you took wins at Oschersleben, wins at Barcelona, stood on the podium at Monza. Monza's a cool podium to stand on, isn't it? Was it the proper one over the pit lane?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was mega. That season was really cool. It's quite a funny story about Brutal Fish. Yeah, I was coaching the owner, Martin Reben. The very first time I met him, I arrived at the airport and I was going to the circuit to do a 2-day test with him to just do some coaching. And I landed at like 10 a.m. On the way to the circuit. I said, right, I'm on the way. And then he said, the day's over, crash the car. I was like, really? I thought he was taking the mick, and then he sent a photo. The car was destroyed. Got there, said, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." And he goes, "Right, we get drunk." And then he got a crate of wine out, and then got drunk. So that was the start of that relationship. And then from that, just become really good friends. And he wanted a pro in his team. So then, yeah, we went on from there. So it was good.
That's brilliant. I mean, that's sort of the kind of test day that not many people will have had.
No.
Testing how much wine you can drink. But it leads to a personal relationship, doesn't it? Not just the racing one, which is always helpful. Just very quick, you stayed on with them in 2020. Obviously, we all know what happened in 2020, COVID and everything else like that. Was that a difficult year? I mean, obviously, people in the BTCC have said it was difficult. They couldn't host corporate stuff. Sponsorship was an issue, finances, all that kind of thing. Did you find it was the same? Obviously, you were kind of racing out in Europe where things were a bit stricter. How was that year?
Financially, it was okay because I had a different deal then to what you need to do in British touring cars. And actually, it was pretty nice because you just walk through security at airports with your letter saying you're allowed to travel, and yeah, it was fine, to be honest. It was quite good. I think I did like 50 flights the year of COVID. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it was okay. But yeah, it was a tough year for the championship because I was leading the championship for the first half of the season, and then everything just started to go wrong. Yeah, good overall in the experience wise, but yeah, it was a tough second half of the season.
Yeah, I bet. Obviously for very obvious reasons. When it all blew over though, 2021, back to the UK, BTCC with Power Max Racing, Adam Weaver and that lot. I guess, I mean, after with what happened with COVID, all the travelling and everything else, did you want to stay in the UK, or was it again just a case of seeing what was available and what you could pull together?
Again, at that point, I was close to not racing. What we were trying to plan with Honda wasn't working, and I was thinking what to do, and we spoke to Adam Weaver, and he said there's a seat, and I was always good at finding sponsorship. Obviously, you can't do that when you're in Asia and Europe; it's mega difficult.
Sure.
So I thought, you know what, I'll give it another crack. We'll commit and get going again, because when I was in Porsche Carrera Cup in the UK, I had quite a lot of sponsors, but over the years of racing abroad, I lost a lot of them. So I sort of started from scratch at the start of that year, and doing it literally all myself to the point where, like, you know, I've had up to 20 businesses that sponsor me. So it was the right decision because I'm good at what I do from that side.
Yeah.
As well, it was a mega season. It was a tough start, but we had some mega results in that car at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to come to something very shortly, but you ended up as teammate to a certain Mr. Plato, who we're all familiar with, and he kind of a Marmite kind of guy. I've always loved him. I thought he was great. He's done so much for the series. He's a bit of a loony, which we like. He doesn't give a monkeys. He just says what he thinks, and you must have learned a lot from him. I mean, obviously you've been racing for a good number of years by this point, and you've learned a lot from that. But did you get a lot from Jason? Because obviously he's done so much and he's so good.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I get on really well with Jason, and I'd say he's my best teammate I've ever had, to be honest.
Really?
Lovely bloke, he'd do anything for you. So knowledgeable about everything. Obviously, he's like Marmite. Just people don't see every side to him, but really, really top bloke. And yeah, you know, when you're in those situations, particularly when you're struggling with the car and you're listening to his feedback as well, and you do pick things up. So yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, that's great. I actually had hospitality with Power Max at Donington that year with Cy. Yeah, do you remember Cy McNally, the guy?
Yeah.
He's a good lad, and he keeps saying, "Oh yeah, I'll get you in for a chat with Jason and with Dan." And he was running all over the place, and I didn't see him for the rest of the day.
That sounds like Cy.
Yeah. He's out in the Isle of Man now, isn't he? With the TT.
Right. Okay. Nice.
WTF Racing. He's with OMG now. But yeah, that was very cool. But yeah, quickly on the Astra, even then, 3 years ago, it was being slated for being too old and all that kind of stuff. But I spoke with Aaron, who's driving it at the moment, and with Mikey earlier this year, and they said that okay, the actual model of the car is old, but it gets replaced and upgraded and new front end and all that other kind of stuff. It's still a good car, isn't it? And I guess you found it certainly towards the end of the season.
Yeah, 100%. It has a lot of potential. I think at the end of my season, for sure, that was when we had the ballast in, which obviously was massively effective, and I wasn't in the running for the championship. So even though it's good, I don't think people realise how much difference the engines make from the independent teams to the factory teams. Everyone talks about the chassis. The chassis is good, but probably a bit more to the power side is why they're not on par with Nappers and Accelerate and things like that. Is my honest opinion.
Yeah, which is, it all comes down to a bit of power now and again, doesn't it? Even going back years and years and years. As I said, it kind of picked up at the end of that year. I've got here that you had like podiums at Knock Hill, Silverstone, Donington, Brands. It was a really strong end to the season. I can remember thinking that, and I remember thinking at the time, I thought, because there was rumors of JP moving on. And I thought, if Dan can stay in that car, it could be really good next year. Was there any opportunity to stay in for 2022? Or once there was the opportunity with Accelerate, did you think, I quite fancy that? Or was it, how did that all come about?
Yeah, I had a really good relationship with the team. I got on really well with Adam Weaver. But at the time, the Accelerate team were on its way up, and the car looked really competitive, so it was somewhere where we had to have a go. So
yeah, and obviously I've referred to them a lot as the most upwardly mobile team. They went from struggling with, this is not a reflection on the drivers, was it with Rob Edwards and Sam Osborne at the back with the MG, to 3-4 years later they were in contention for titles and obviously winning them. There was a question here. Dan Mayhew, evening Dan. He said that he loved your year, apart from the crash, which we'll come to. It says, how did being in a top team in one of the best cars feel? And also working with Tom Ingram, who's obviously been tutored by Jason Plato as well.
Yeah, it felt great. I mean, Tom was a really good teammate. We were definitely competitors. Yeah, I could tell that, but actually we worked really well together. I learned a lot from him, and he certainly set the standard with a pace. He was on form and obviously won the championship that year. But as well, we did work together, and there were some places where I was quicker than him, and I'd like to think I helped him a little bit that year as well, because everyone knows you need a strong teammate. So we knew we were competitors. We had that feel between us, but we got on well. We cracked on together. We worked well together, and it was a really good year. That was also the first year of the hybrid, so we did have quite a few issues, but not as bad as other people. It was more teething issues, and that wasn't to say it was the team. It was some of it was just bad luck as well. But yeah, I mean, it was a good place to be. And when we were thinking of what to do, at the end of the day, I chose to go to a team in a year where that team won the Drivers' Championship. So, and where we got 3 wins. So it was definitely the right choice.
Yeah, definitely. Just on the subject of cars, I don't like comparing cars, but obviously you come out of the Astra, which wasn't old, but it was older than the i30. Which I think was only in its second year, wasn't it? I think it was. The car was bedded in for the first year. I think Chris Smiley was there and Senna Proctor and a few others. Was it? Did it feel like a newer car, or did it feel just like different, or what were the kind of differences between
the weakness with the Astra was traction. So I remember the Hyundai having better traction. But as well, like I said before, the big difference was the power. We had a really strong engine that year as well, which obviously always gives you that little extra bit. And also, when you know you got a little bit, obviously I'm talking about fractions, but when you got that little bit more power, you end up driving a bit better subconsciously as well. So yeah, they were the main differences.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke with Mikey Doble, and he said that the difference between the Astra and the Hyundai, one of them was, I mean, he hasn't driven the Hyundai, but because the Hyundai is a bit more slippery, and it kind of, whereas the Astra, he said it's a bit more blocky, which isn't very fair, but it's true, isn't it? I mean, yeah, the Hyundai cuts a bit of a smoother path through the air. It started pretty well the year, that year was quite solid, running at the front end, higher than you had been previously, and then Alton Park happened, which I don't like talking about crashes. I'm sure you don't like talking about this one either, so I'm not going to do it for long. We all saw it. We all winced when it happened. Can you just talk us through what you remember about it? Because it was nothing that you could do, was there? There was not. It was just one of those things, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of those things, and yeah, it was just horrendous. I mean, at that point, for example, early on in the year at Brands Indy, our hybrid wasn't working in qualifying, so then I qualified 17th instead of 7th, and by Alton, we were just getting everything right. And, into that race, I was battling for P3, and that was where it was all coming together. So it was a shame to have it at that point, because even, when we came back, we were still strong. So yeah, it was just one of those things. It was a horrendous experience, particularly from the money side. Probably like one of the worst years I've ever had in my life from that side of things, just doing it. But when you look back on it, it's actually provided amazing memories for me of what I did after, and it's just life, isn't it? It's tough. Yeah, you just move on, work harder, and move on.
Tough stuff, and that's the thing. And obviously, and you had a few aches and pains, which we're not going to go into the anatomy of it. I remember what you were saying. You had a few aches and pains. I think what it was the videos that you put out, with the vlogs and everything, was, I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes to the financial side of it and how much money you need and how it gets fed into the team and where it gets spent and things like that. I mean, I think a lot of people would agree it was an amazing, I mean, obviously it was tough for you, but it was amazing insight for the fans to see how much goes on behind the scenes just to get back after something like that, not just to repair the car, but to look at the funding going forward for the rest of the season. It was really tough, wasn't it?
Yeah, I only started to do the vlogs at the start of that year. It was a tough thing to do, to cover it, because you still felt a bit awkward doing it, because you kind of always get this idea of, oh, someone's going to think I'm an idiot, or someone will have, why are you doing that, or feel sorry for yourself. But that's the whole point of doing a vlog, isn't it? It's showing behind the scenes.
And that's why I don't like bringing things up like this,
no, it's fine. God, I've talked about it
because, it's because people look at you and think, "Oh, don't talk about that." You think, well, you kind of have to. You got to talk about,
Well, it's the most interesting stuff, isn't it?
I spoke with David Bradman, who was Roland Ratzenberger's teammate. I mean, that was pretty difficult. But yeah, it was a tough time, wasn't it? I mean, and I think when you announced that you were going to be back and you got the backing and the sponsorship and the funding and everything, everyone was chuffed to bits for you. That must have been a huge relief.
I mean, to be honest, it went on for like 8 months. I didn't get the money in 2 weeks and got back. It was a long thing. So I got a few bits together in a couple of weeks just to get us out at Croft. And originally we thought the crash damage was going to be 70, 80 grand. And in the end, it was like 120. It was just insane. And wow. I certainly didn't raise all of it. I had to find ways of getting out of it. And I carried that on to the next year and even at the end of last year. So, wow. that debt has been, that crash has had a knock-on effect for a couple of years.
Wow.
So but the fact that we got out and we got to Croft and managed to do what I did, that was like, I'd still say Croft was the best day of my life, going back and winning.
Yeah.
So it was amazing.
And that, we'll come to that in just a second. I was just seeing from like Triple Crown Esports on Twitter, Evening Folks. They said that the guy said he was at the entry to Nicker Brook when the crash happened, so he would have seen it. I won't say the best view, but you know what I mean. You've got a clear view of it, and crikey, that kind of been fun to watch. Obviously, it wasn't great from your seat either, Dan, but
I had a good view.
yeah, front row view, unfortunately. Just to move on though to Croft. I mean, if you could write a story about coming back from an accident, that would be it, wouldn't it? I mean, you must have felt so determined to do well after what had gone on and everything, and the fortnight in between, or 2-3 weeks in between. You can't imagine that would happen, surely.
No, never. No, still can't believe it now, to be honest. Even if you write it, it's just ridiculous. And especially the mess the car was in, the mess I was in. I remember just before the second practice at Croft, they called me in to review the crash and go through it all, and I couldn't watch it myself because I was still a mess. And I like before the second practice, I was like having a panic attack, and I were in tears and all the rest of it. And then I got in the car and I was P3 in the second practice. I felt like, right, get it to go, put my helmet on, go. So then, you know, I started third on the grid as well, and I don't know, like, just I think out of all that, you just get in the zone, and I don't know how I did it, to be honest. I think it was weird. I think it was weird after doing all that and no sleep and still being in pain, and yeah, don't know, but it was good. I'd take it.
No, brilliant. I remember when when you won, even like things like David Addison, who doesn't particularly tend to go ballistic and get emotional, in the commentary box, he went nuts. I mean, Paul O'Neill, everyone was so pleased, and we saw what it meant to you when you got out of the car and with the trophy and everything. And it was brilliant. And then you went and did it again. It just couldn't have gone any better, could it? And it's one of those stories that everyone kind of loves, and people still talk about it. Not so much the crash, which is good. It's a kind of a good way to put the crash, not to bed, but something positive's come out of it, which is
definitely. And you know, when you look back in 20 years, that's what I'll remember. Croft, not the 4 or 5 months after that of struggling and driving terribly because I'm scared of getting any more crash damage and all the rest of it. You know, I'll just remember that day. So that's a good thing.
Which is the way it should be in the long run and with hindsight. And you got like Lyndon Belt on Facebook. He said,
Rich, I need to get my phone charger, so I reckon my phone's gonna die.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, we'll wrap up soon. But if you need a charge, we'll go and grab a charge. But yeah, yes, folks, you've seen the comments. I have seen them. Don't worry, and we're going to work them in right at the end. We're just going to wind down now. But thank you everyone for tuning in. There's nearly 200 of you tuning in, which is very, very nice. I was just going to say, Lyndon Belt, Tears of Sadness at Alton and Tears of Joy at Croft, which is absolutely right. So yeah, we are just going to have a quick charge, and we'll blast through the last bit. There we are. Awesome. I've been freestyling. All good. So, I was saying that you've got like Lyndon Belt on Facebook. He said that we've gone from tears of sadness and pain to tears of joy, which is absolutely the way it should be. And we'll remember the latter. And you said you were worried about getting crash damage and stuff. Good way to avoid that is being out in front, which happened in the last race of the season. I was there at Paddock Hill Bend. And obviously there was another story within the team on the day, which we'll come to, if any big one. But again, a lot of people down here in the south haven't seen you win down this neck of the woods, and it was great. Obviously, it was a great season for the team. You'd come back from what happened with the win, and it was nice to win the last race of the season. That kind of must be nice to take into the winter, and even with all the issues that were going on, it was a nice way to end the year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Brands GP is my favourite circuit in the UK.
Yes.
Really love it there. And to be part of that final podium as well at the end of the
Yeah.
season and to be on the top set was really cool. And then obviously Tom won the championship, so mega atmosphere, really, really cool atmosphere.
Yeah, and there's something about like for the final day of the season at Brands Hatch. I mean, I go there pretty much every year, and there's just a different feeling about the place. And obviously, to have the team win the championship, and you'd be right in the middle of it, having won the last race. I mean, I bet there were some celebrations that night, wasn't there? Got to be.
Yeah, I went to London. That was a good night.
I bet that was expensive.
Yeah, no, it was good. And then obviously, I had a really good battle with Josh Cook in that race.
Yeah,
but obviously it got missed. But even watching it back, it was such a great battle with Ash and Tom, wasn't it? Like it just came down to the wire. So, and like you say, it's something different about that final round. It's dark and it's all on the line. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, fantastic way to end the season. We've got Lyndon Belt again. He said he's got a signed picture of Dan holding the cup at Croft, and it takes pride of place on the living room wall. That's cool. That's
Good
cool.
stuff. Thank you,
We
Linda.
like that. We like that. Was there an opportunity to stay with Accelerate for 23, or because of the financial knock on from the crash? I guess was it very difficult to do that?
Yeah, budgets were going up and mine was going down, so no opportunities.
No, that's fair enough. And Team Hard, no disrespect to Team Hard, but I think it's fairly common knowledge that it's one of the cheaper seats on the grid, just because of the way they operated. And the Cupra has it's sort of done well in Europe, and was that a move that you thought was an interesting one, and it was one that you could put together pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited about that opportunity at the beginning and what they did and where they were at the time. They really was stepping up the game, and the Cupra has potential. And it kind of started going wrong when they decided to sort of try run 6 cars.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that it was a bit of a stretch.
It was budget led to start with, but actually, I think it had really, really good potential. But the big problem with that is we couldn't do the testing pre-season that we needed to do, and then you're on your back foot and you're testing over weekends, and it's just a knock-on effect. It's obviously so competitive. If you're not on top of it at the start of the season, it takes a long time to sort of get things going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've got, as you say, the Cooper's got potential and it's a solid car. I mean, and in the right hands, it can go very, very well. I mean, not to have a pop at anyone who was running at the back with it, because all that comes down to budgets and all that kind of stuff. But, you had, in the first 21 races, you were in the top 10 7 times, which is no mean feat on the grid and in that car and everything. And I guess you took to it pretty quickly. Was it a car that you liked to drive? I mean, was it like, obviously perhaps not as strong as
it was a good car. The handler, it needs, like I said before, it's only fine tuning. But it was a good car. It was just trying to get it in the window. But because we didn't do pre-season testing, we were changing dampers over weekends. And any weekend that I've ever gone well in British touring cars, you're tweaking the toe or the camber or the ride height. You're not changing dampers. So then, trying to do those changes and learn, and you go into qualifying with a different setup than you've got in FP2. You've then got to adapt to that. But okay, you adapt to it, but then you're missing the 2 temps that you need because you're not fully on top of it. So the car and the chassis itself has got potential.
Yeah, which is showed, with. I think like Bobby's taken it onto a couple of podiums and stuff, and it does lead us on to the bit that everyone remembers from that season. I don't want to bring this up. You know what I'm going to say, Donington.
Yeah.
Oh God, honestly, everyone was gutted when it happened. But I mean, I think you got 19th in the first race, hauled it up to 12th. I remember that drive race 2 was really, really, really impressive. 12th, was it reverse grid pole? I think it was. I think, and what happened? I can't really elaborate on it. I mean, what What
Yeah, I mean,
happened?
it's. I remember having a similar feeling when when they drew the reverse grid out for Croft in the BTC. You know, I thought, right, I'm going to win this. I thought, right, okay, I'm going to win it. I really shouldn't have done in that car at that point. I don't think, we had the quickest car on the grid and they had accelerating Toyotas behind us and stuff. But I think it was one of the best drives of my life, and
Absolutely.
I saved a lap of hybrid when Butcher was behind me. I had a bit of a gap and I had hybrid for the last lap. It was it it should have been easy. And then obviously drive shaft snapped and that was it. And you just again you couldn't write it, which was
Did you
devastating.
did you feel it? I mean, obviously, as you said, you drove so well. Everyone was willing for it to be a lap shorter, I guess. But um, did you feel anything? The car wasn't quite right, or I mean, I guess you had a
No,
lot going on behind you, but you didn't feel anything.
nothing at all. Absolutely nothing. Even when you get a bit paranoid when you're leading, there was nothing that I felt. Um,
Ugh,
and then yeah, it just goes, and you just think, wow, you just think, give me a break. It's a tough year anyway. Being towards the back and struggling a little bit, but when you get an opportunity like that, and then you maximise it, and something happens like that, you think, oh my god.
yeah.
So yeah, not good.
I mean,
Um,
obviously, it wasn't. It was far worse for you, but it was tough to watch. I mean, a lot of people just. I remember social media went bonkers afterwards. It was just because I think the word "no" in capitals featured more on social media in the 5 minutes directly after it than
Yeah,
I
I,
ever
I
seen.
remember a lot of the team bosses who were coming up to me after the race, a lot of the drivers, the amount of messages I got from people who even I don't speak to, drivers who said sorry for
Yeah,
that. So it was a big thing, which was really nice, obviously. And then thing that always upset me is imagining the celebrations with the team, because
yeah,
obviously
how it could have
that
been.
would have been the first outright win for the Cupra.
Yeah,
It would have been the first and only independent win all year for another team. First win for an M Sport, I think. Engine at the time, I think
I think it. What? Yeah, I think yeah.
that year. So yeah, it was
Oh,
it was I won't swear, but it wasn't good.
it was crap.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not good. But one of those things, and again, nothing you could have done. But then it was a strong end to the season, things like that. But just to come up to the present day, I mean, with budgets and whatnot, which we'll come to in a sec. Was there any chance to be on the grid this year, or were you just looking at other series just for maybe a Porsche or
Um,
TCR?
I was trying initially, but after 2 years of the crash, and last year I had to borrow quite a chunk of money just to get through it. I was kind of like at the end of my tether, and I thought, this is difficult, incredible amount of stress. Where am I going to get the money? If sponsors drop out, what am I going to do? Where am I going to find it? And then I tried, and I spoke to different teams, and the budgets were just going up and up and up. So I thought, well, you know, what's the point of being in a championship, proving you can win races and do the job and be good at the media side and all the rest of it, when your reward is, give us X amount of money, which is unachievable.
Yeah, give us more.
So yeah, at the time I thought, well, no, I can't do it. So then I started looking at different options.
And obviously, you've landed, with the Toro Verde team, with the GT team, with Jack, who's sadly not racing this weekend, is he? Which is a shame. He's got some stuff going on.
Yeah.
But as you said at the start, there's been some progress made, and I think the cars look great in the team, and it's looking a bit more positive, isn't it now?
Yeah, I was mega excited. I always loved Porsches. Obviously, like I said, I feel like I made a mistake stepping away from it all that time ago. When I've been in GT cars, I've done good jobs, and I just love the brand. The cars are amazing. They're really raw. They're exactly the same. You know, like when you come out of a season and you're struggling and you're fighting to be in the top 15 in touring cars, and you know it's the car or the engine. When you're getting something where everything's exactly the same, it's down to me then.
Yeah.
Which obviously comes with a bit of pressure. But I actually enjoy it. You know, it's been tough with summer, being a bit slower at the start of the year, but I knew that was going to happen to start with. It's about how we keep progressing and where it goes, which is important.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we had some testing before the start of the year, but because the weather was so shocking, it really put us on the back foot. Only had one dry day test in the car. So I always use the example of, you take one of them quick Porsche boys and you put them in a touring car for one test day and then see how they get on at the first round.
Yeah.
Not going to work. It's just not going to work. So even though I know Porsches, but the cars, they're not so much different in terms of their technique, but it's the knowledge of how to use the tires and how to bring them in and where the peak is and what to do with the setup. Then that just takes seat time. So yeah, we're three rounds in this weekend. We had a really good test last weekend, and I'm really hoping. I'm sure I'm still going to struggle at times, but I think we're just going to go forward from here. I feel like the top boys are obviously plateaued. They've been in it for a couple of years and they've done a lot where I'm still finding my feet quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, that kind of knowledge from last week at Thruxton to take into the same circuit this weekend can only help. It's probably, feels like it could be the start of the season, doesn't it? Like a real launch pad for the rest of it. Which is great. Excuse me. One thing I do have to touch on, which a few people have commented on very, very quickly. Where are we? Very, very quick. Very, very quick. Can't remember who it was. My apologies. I think one of them was Keith Mail. Yes, evening, Keith. Just generally the difference between a BTCC car and a TCR UK car, for example. I know we can't really generalise because they're all different, but in terms of the car and of the budgets, I mean, is it? You said earlier BTCC and TCR are chalk and cheese, but what are the main differences, really, just from a driver's point of view?
From the driving point of view, the best way to explain it is a TCR car feels more like a road car compared to a British touring car. British touring car, for example, Thruxton's a good example. You'll be driving down to Church, which is a right-hander, and you'll be going down there at 150 miles an hour, and just before you're turning in, the wheel's pointing left because you've got so much rotation at the rear because you need to make it as loose as possible so it doesn't understeer. So when some drivers jump into a British touring car, they've got to get used to that feeling of it being out of control all the time. And TCR cars are a bit more, you still get understeer, you still got to make it loose, but your steering wheel will be pointing in a straight direction and you'll turn. British touring cars, there's a lot more you can do in terms of setup. So, and from an engineering point of view, and again, to the point where it's easier for it to be out the window as well because it's so complicated compared to a TCR car. Paddle shifts, TCR car compared to a sequential box. But mainly it's the out of control feeling which makes it unique compared to anything else.
That's crazy. I love that. You just got to get used to it being out of control. That's a great line. Just quickly, I mean, a few people have talked about cost and things, and we all know. I mean, you've mentioned that budgets are going up this year, and I think it's part of the reason. This is not a criticism of the series or anything, but it's part of the reason why guys like you and Jack and George and George Gamble and like Stephen Jelly have stepped away. I know Rory stepped away for other reasons. I mean, can you put a percentage of how much it's gone up? Obviously, we're not going to talk actual figures because that's
no. I mean, I've read obviously so many comments and people who know a little bit and people who know nothing and the guessing and all the rest of it. And
I'm probably the latter.
It's fine, but one one thing about it is I don't think the budgets have gone up ridiculously. I
Yeah.
think there's just more pressure on the driver to bring more nowadays than they used to. There's always exceptions of people paying big money all the time, and people who have the massive sponsors or a lot of wealth in the family, and they'll pay the budgets.
Yeah.
I think for people like me who've gone and tried to search for a lower budget, that's kind of gone away. There's more demand on bringing higher budgets on the driver. So the hybrid increased it,
Yes.
but it hasn't increased it by like 30-40%, which is what I think it's probably gone up for me in 3 years.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So I think that's the big thing. I think there's just a bit more pressure on the drivers now than in the past. Like for example, like back in the day when the manufacturers were involved, the drivers used to get paid a lot. And it's always been the case that touring cars been a lot of money. You've got to contribute. Again, it's not a criticism.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's a mega platform, and if you can make it work, my bread and butter sponsors are not blue chip companies who have 300-400 grand to chuck at it. Mine are they're not that. So yeah, it makes it difficult. But like I say, I don't think the actual running costs have gone up so much. There's just more pressure on the drivers now.
Yeah, sure. And I'm glad you said that, because obviously there was a whole discussion. I actually got slated for it. I got asked my opinion on it, and I basically said that people like Colin, or people that have, or like Jake, who have got like Laser on board, or got the big title sponsors, or they've got, or the guys that have got Napa behind them, things like that.
Before you say that, before anyone takes what I said wrong, obviously there's always exceptions.
Yes.
There's Ash, there's Colin, there's different circumstances, but I'd say what I've said is for the majority of the grid. Yeah.
And that's what I was alluding to when I said my bit. I said, well, there's these guys that are going to be able to get the budgets together because of the backing they've got, or they've had in the last few years, whatever. And then there's guys like yourself and others who have left the series. It's not as easy to get the lesser budget. And basically I put a line in saying, if I was in that situation, if I had the choice between BTCC and TCR, even though you get more racing for your money in BTCC, if I didn't have the money, I'd go TCR. And that's what I said, and that turned into me hating the BTCC suddenly after 36 years. But I'm glad you've said that, because that's what I was trying to say back then. But yeah, it's just a shame, but it is what it is, isn't it? Yeah, cool. Would you like to get back in at some point if you could?
If things changed, I think, yeah. I love the championship. I think the coverage is amazing. I think what it has to offer is incredible. The racing is insane. I've still been watching the races, even when I'm racing Porsches now. I just wouldn't put myself back in the position I've been for the last 2 years, where I'm stressed out of my head for 12 months a year, from a financial point of view. That's all. But I don't know. I don't know which way it'll go, but yeah, potentially.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to see you back in it, but as long as you're happy racing whatever you're racing, that's the main thing, isn't it? And there's no stress. Well, not as much stress as you said.
Not as much, yeah.
It's never zero stress. Right, okay. Just looking at the time, we're going to wrap up, because I always do these little fun questions at the end here. Just some little ones. I ask them to most people. Obviously, you said you're involved with the Porsches. You watch the BTCC. Do you follow any motorsport really closely outside the TOCA package that you're involved in? Are you an F1, or are you IndyCar, or
not closely? I watch a bit of everything. I watched the Indy 500. I watched the F1. Obviously, most of the time when I watch F1, I thought, why did I watch that? But actually,
it feels like a mistake after 5 laps, doesn't it?
Yeah. But obviously, it was great to see Lando win and Charles win. And then I watched quite a lot of GT racing, because I've got friends in different GT categories. I watch the big stuff, and then I watch stuff where I know people in it, because it's quite exciting.
Yeah.
Like the other week, I wanted to watch Porsche Carrera Cup when I got home, and it didn't record. So I watched British GT instead, which was really good to watch, to be fair.
Yeah, I watched the Silverstone round, which was lively when it was
Yeah,
down, when Adam Smalley won it, didn't he? And
yeah, that was good to watch.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to get Ian Loggy on for a chat because he's got some stories, and I'm trying to get him on. So Ian, if you see this, respond to me email. No, there's some good stuff, absolutely, and like the GT world seems to be really thriving at the moment, doesn't it? Which is great to see.
Yeah.
Okay, this is always a good one. Is there anything you'd like to try, given an opportunity, whether it be like NASCAR or, I don't know, World Endurance Championship sports cars or supercars in Australia, anything like that you'd like to have a go at?
I've got all of them, but
Yeah.
I've always really wanted to have a go in a rally car, a proper rally car. I'd probably say more than a V8 supercar, obviously, it'd be amazing, but probably a rally car I'd go for.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah, I think I'd like to, but in the passenger seat, I couldn't. Yeah, no, that's cool. We like that. Okay, this is good. When you were growing up, did you have any racing kind of heroes? I mean, obviously, when I was young, I'm a bit older. Mine was Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna, whose pictures up here. People like that. Did you have anyone who was your favourite driver when you were growing up?
Not really. To be honest, again, like a little bit weird because of the way I got into motorsport, and I never came from a motorsport family. Like I was a little bit weird. Like I watched it. I liked Formula One, but I didn't really, I'd say obviously when Hamilton was at its part, he was someone who you watched on TV all the time. And then when I got older, to be honest, like when I really wanted to get in touring cars, I looked up to Plato a hell of a lot as well, at what he did on and off track. But yeah, like I said, I'm a bit of a weird one because of the way I got into motorsport. I was too busy driving it all and watching it.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. Just very quickly, one I'm going to throw in here very quickly. Dan Mayhew said, with the skill showed at Snetterton, going rallying is a good shout. And carrying on from that, Keith Mayer said, Group B rally car or WRC Rally 1. Oh, I think I know what I'd pick.
I got WRC 1, to be honest.
Yeah, we go. Oh, see, I'm old. I'd go Group B. Audi Quattro or something, or the Delta Integrale, but it's never going to happen.
I go in the quickest thing possible.
Anything that's rapid. Yeah, Rally 1, we'll go with that. Cheers, guys. Okay. You've already said your favourite racetrack is Spa. Your best one in the UK is Brands Hatch, which I love to hear. I'm going to be at Brands Hatch on Sunday, which is good. Very quickly, have you got a favourite car that you've ever driven on a racetrack?
The coolest car I've ever driven was at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and Porsche let me drive the 1998 GT1 Le Mans winning car.
Oh.
Wow. So that's by far the most special car I've driven.
Wow.
And then I'd say, I did the Dubai 24 Hours a few years ago with Ian Loggy, actually, in a GT3 RSR. That was really cool.
Wow, that's some very cool machinery. Very, very cool.
Yeah, lucky dip.
Very. That's brilliant. Okay, last question, and I'm just going to reel off a few names here. I say this to everyone. You've raced against a lot of drivers in various different series. I mean, I've got a huge list. I'm not going to read them all. So I'm just going to rattle some off. Mention some that you mentioned, some that you raced in this Scirocco Cup. Frank Bieler, we had like Nicola Larini, Johnny Herbert, Lames, Cicotto, Nadal, Kankin and Lyondike, these kind of guys. You've raced against Max Gertz and Michael Ammermuller and Rene Rast and got like Laurens van Tour, Johnny Adam, Morbidelli, Norbert Michelitz, obviously champion, Vervish, Verne, Blundell, Christian Fittipaldi, Scott Pruitt you've raced against, which is cool. I love that. I had a chat with Scott. He's a good guy. Bourdais, and then the touring car guys, Cook and Camish and Neil and the Collards and Flash and Jake Hill and Ash, Tom, Colin, Jason, all those kind of guys. I mean, you've raced against some pretty hefty hitters. Is there any of them that have really impressed you? Maybe not as the best driver or anything like that, but is there anyone that has impressed you the most about how they go about their driving or just in general? Is there anyone who sticks out?
Mega difficult to say because obviously there's so many amazing people there. But I'd say someone who has been a real pleasure to race against is Rob Huff.
Yeah.
I raced against him a lot in Asia, in TCR International. Had some mega battles, and I remember there was one circuit at Ningbo. We both were leading, and we both got a drive-through penalty. So we were leading by like 20 seconds, and we came in like this through the pits. Then we went back out and we're still leading, just battling all the way to the end in the wet. And like something that he did that weekend as well. He was quicker than me for majority of the weekend, and then he come past me, and then he was taking this monster curve, which I thought, there's no way you're going over that. But he did it. He tried it. He did something new, and sort of you learn something new off every driver, and you think you've got to try it, because what good is at the end of the weekend gone? I could have taken that curve in qualifying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I go with Rob. Yeah, really top bloke as well.
Yeah, yes, and he's a top bloke, and obviously he won at the weekend, which is good. He's a top bloke. I'm trying to get him back on here. We're trying to rearrange it, but yeah, one of those guys who's been and done everything in touring cars, and yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, you know what he's done at Macau every year, like he's mega, isn't he? So
now there's a circuit. Oh dear, that'd be. Have you driven it, Macau?
No, I've been there. I've never driven it.
Yeah.
Can't say it's on the top of my bucket list, to be honest. I prefer to go to Bathurst than Macau, I think.
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah. I think even as fans, I mean, you want to go to Bathurst, don't you? Because it's just it's incredible, absolutely incredible. Great circuit. But no, brilliant. That's great stuff. It's probably a good time to end. We always say about an hour and a half, and it always goes over. So apologies for that. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I hope we've covered everything that you wanted to. And we'll be back next week. We're announcing one tomorrow night. So we'll see you next Wednesday. Dan, thank you very, very much for your time. Really, really good speaking with you. And we obviously wish you all the best for Thruxton and for the rest of the season.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone who's watched. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks everyone, and thank you, Dan. And we'll see you very, very soon. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week.